These are 10 former FBI executives who were in the counterintelligence, intelligence, and counterterrorism programs of the FBI. Between them, they have 250 years of federal law enforcement expertise. They worked for 4 FBI directors, 7 presidents. There's no partisanship in this. These are just true counterterrorism experts. And they sent a letter to Mike Johnson and to Chuck Schumer and to the Homeland and Intelligence committees in both chambers saying, we don't want to lie to you. There is an invasion going on at our southern border. It is of young military men coming from hostile countries, particularly China and Russia. They're very worried about those 2 countries sending thousands of military men age across the border. And as it gets worse, they're in a position to strike our infrastructure. They're in a position to create warfare on our land. And we want you to know this. We don't want you to buy the spin. We know all the warnings. You see it with your own eyes. But there has never been a more serious threat to the security of America than this moment. Just think about that. You got 250 years Civil War, World War I, World War II, 9/11. They believe that this is the most insecure moment in American history because the border is wide open. It generated an immediate response from Mike Johnson saying this is why we got to hold out. No Langford stuff. We need a transformational border deal, and if we don't get it, we're going to hold out for it. So the Speaker signals that this letter backs the entire caucus for holding out and rejecting something like the Langford deal, that there's been an invasion. First time. We've had wars. We've had terrorist attacks. We haven't had an invasion. And what is going on at the border, they said, is the equivalent of an invasion. And they called it an invasion. That they're clearly invoking the language of the Constitution. They're clearly throwing their support behind the idea that Governor Greg Abbott has in Texas. And they want the folks to know, based on their experience, 250 years of counterterrorism and counterintelligence experience, they believe we're in the midst of an invasion and that the security threat to the United States is at its worst in any time in our 248-year existence. There's a constitutional crisis on the horizon. This is not a normal federal legal dispute. This is, as Governor Abbott said in his statement, this is now a constitutional issue of over the right of a state to defend itself when its federal government ceased to defend the state. And that is the argument they're going to make. When the injunction went before the Supreme Court, it was a legal issue involving a law, involving a temporary injunction. Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton, who was on my show last night, they tend to elevate this now to the constitutional argument that the Supreme Court cannot allow Texas to be unable to defend itself in this invasion. And this letter that comes from the FBI former experts, it's going to become evidence number one in the case. It wasn't coordinated with them. It happened completely separate of the legal dispute, but it provides the exact argument that Texas needs to go to the Supreme Court and say we can't protect ourselves. The FBI's best experts say this is an invasion. The federal government sits there with a blank stare on its face every day and lets 5, 10, 12,000 people a day invade our country. You have to let us invoke the constitutional causes that allow us to defend our border. And I believe that that's where this is headed. This will be one of the most important Supreme Court cases, not only in our lifetime, probably in the history of the United States. Any of the great cases that have changed the course of this history, this is in that league because Texas is tired. It is no longer going to be able to support the crime and the illegals and the raucous behavior that has come across this border. And now, with all of these military-age men from China and Russia. And by the way, you don't leave China unless your government allows you to leave it and cross the border legally in the United States. So Amen. China has to be privy and sanction this. That's one of the points that these guys make in their interviews. So, this is going to be not only one of the most important Supreme Court decisions in our lifetime, I think it's going to be in the history of the country. Back about a decade ago, remember Arizona v. U.S., the Supreme Court sided with the Obama administration saying states can't try to enforce federal law. That was a legal issue, and a lot of people felt that was a bad ruling. But this is not going to be on, can we enforce a federal law? This is, we are invoking the clause in the Constitution that allows a state to defend itself in the absence of federal assistance. And that's going to take it to really one of the most historic arguments we've seen before our court in any generation of Americans.